Welcome to episode 2 of I'm Not Actually a Gas Station Attendant. We talked a decent amount about our early local and local-ish shows. Now I guess we're going to talk about the first time we played out of state. It was in Columbus, Ohio, at a venue that in DIY circles I guess was somewhat legendary, the Neal House. We got lucky because, well, Chris's big brother was an Ordination of Aaron, and Ordination of Aaron was quite well liked in Columbus. And
this was to be their last show.
Their last show in Columbus, anyway.
Well, okay, yeah.
Because I believe that they played a local show after that, and I want to say they played in Indy after that as well.
Yeah,
but like they were making, I guess, as much as a somewhat small DIY band could. They were kind of making their victory lap before they broke up, and I think Billy was moving to California to be in a band with members of Indian Summer called Daredevil. But we'll talk about that as well and a little later on in this episode. So the way I remember it, Chris and Dan, the bass player of Ordination of Aaron, they had to push out playing the show for a week or two because they both had to go to prom. Dan was at that point was in college at Western Michigan University, but his girlfriend, I believe, who he's married to now, she was a senior, I think, at Loy Norix or maybe Portage Northern, I don't know. One of those places, one of those suburban-ish high schools. And anyways, and Chris went to Loy Norix's prom with his, at the time, girlfriend, Brandy. And so that was what happened. So the way I remember it, we picked up Chris from school. I think he cut out early that day. He might have cut high school or cut lunch. How did you? I mean, you were in high school as well. How did you manage that? Did your parents just let you take the day off?
I might have skipped. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a point where your parents stop like being angry at you for skipping, or they
didn't know.
Or they did. That's a possibility. Right. Hey, Mom, my friends are going to pick me up at high school and we're going to go to Columbus, Ohio. We'll be back sometime in the next 24 to 36 hours.
To play at some, college kid's house.
Yeah, at a frat house in Columbus, Ohio.
That's one thing that was a new experience for me because we went to Kalamazoo, which for the time, Kalamazoo was the big deal for us, or Grand Rapids or Kalamazoo was the big deal for us. But Columbus, those houses are huge. They're like 3-story houses, and they're like big barns,
and I do think literally that the Neal House was possibly at one point a frat house. I don't know for sure, but it was rather big.
It was real big, yeah. So it was very shocking to see those.
Yeah, so we left Kalamazoo. For some reason, Ian rode in the Ordination of Aaron van.
Maybe I just
Billy
thought it would
Sprague.
be fun to do. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was probably because she had more space and you could sleep. I don't even know how the rest of the band got there. I know that all the gear was in the van. And I mean, Ordination of Aaron, I know how we got there. But Ordination of Aaron, I think all took a separate vehicle for some reason. I don't know why. And Bill drove with his girlfriend at the time, and you rode, I want to say, in the back, and probably just knowing you probably slept the whole time.
I did. I think I slept in the bass drum. I think I slept in my bass drum, yes.
Yeah.
That's coming back to me now, yes.
Yeah, and the rest of Constantine Sincati, we rode in a friend of ours, this woman, Jessica, young woman at the time. She was probably 17 or 18. We rode in her, Cutlass or something. Oldsmobile Cutlass. I don't remember a whole lot about it other than riding in this car. It was me. It was, 3 or 4 of us in this car. And I want to say we had the advance of the Cap'n Jazz LP somehow.
Oh yeah, we all had cassette copies of that. Yes.
Yeah. So we were listening to that for a long way, and then I made a mixtape as well that had like, what was that band that it was Honeywell dudes doing like kind of weird One-Eyed Richard and the Goddamn Liars.
Yeah,
That's
I remember
what they
you
were
got
called.
that record. Yeah.
Yeah, and some other stuff, and yeah, so we were just listening to stuff all the way down and all the way back. But yeah, so for some reason, like I said, I'm pretty certain it was just so that you didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like you just slept in the back of that van. Do you remember, now that it's kind of coming back to you, was there a loft or anything? Or?
No, I don't think so. I think it was just enough room for me to stick my half of my body into my 20-inch bass drum and just fall asleep.
Yeah. So we got there. Scott Bibin of Bloodlink Records and other things, I guess, was there. He had bought a car somewhere in in New Jersey that I think he paid $100 for, and the whole plan was, I'm going to drive it to Ohio and then drive it back and then junk it. Like that was his plan. And this fellow who figured into our history pretty significantly, Daniel McVeigh, he rode with Scott, and he's the one who ended up putting out our second 7-inch. But we played with Ordination of Aaron, obviously. 3 Studies for a Crucifixion played.
And Harriet the Spy.
Yeah, I guess Harriet the Spy played. For some reason, I cannot remember that at all. But
that's the first thing I saw when I walked in, was them playing. The bass player had blue hair. It's the first time I ever saw an acoustic bass amp, and I was like, wow, look at that thing. And like, they were amazing, and I was like immediately happy to be there. That's my memory of that.
They were amp dudes for sure.
Yeah.
And then this band from Indianapolis named
Hearst
played, and they were the singer was in the band Hardball, the straight edge-ish, hardline-ish band Hardball from Indianapolis, and he then later went on to be in Burn It Down. Some of the other dudes, I don't know, one of them was in that band that we talked about earlier, Once Again, who were kind of an Ebullition Records thing. I don't remember much about them.
They were pretty stylish as Hearst. I remember them being pretty, like, not that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's my memory of them, is that they were, when you say that they were in like a kind of hardline, one guy was in a hardline band, they didn't look like that.
No.
They were like sweaters and nice, their bowl haircuts kind of, and tight pants, and like they had the look down. Yeah. Albeit the Midwestern version of it, and like they had pretty cool instruments and stuff, which also factors into another story.
Factors into another story, yes, which is quite fun. But yeah, so I don't know. We played. We got offered to do a record. I think initially we were going to do like a 12-inch or something, like that. But
I believe this was, or maybe I'm confusing this. Please help me if I am. But somebody actually requested we play a song.
Yes. This woman, I really don't remember her name anymore, which I apologize. In the instance that perhaps she's listening, I'm sorry. But anyways, she wanted us to play Forget Everything I Ever Told You. Yeah, we, at that point, probably hadn't played it in what felt like a year, but it was probably 3 or 4 months.
But yeah, so keep in mind, like, this is our first out of state show, and all we had was a demo, and we got a request to play that song. That was weird. Like, I mean, not in a bad way. That was kind of like, awesome. Wow, like I'd never experienced that. So like, yeah, that was a big thing.
Yeah, and we were lucky also because we were all playing through much nicer gear than we normally did.
That's right. We borrowed everything,
Yeah, I was playing through Dan from Ordination of Aaron's jazz bass that I want to say was like a 1972 or something. It was beautiful. Sounded great. I think he even had like a like non-stock bridge pickup put in that was even like had deeper bass. And then of course we were playing through at the time what was like the creme de la creme of bass amplification, which was a hard key.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Yeah. And,
which was she kept in really nice shape and had like Zill bells and cool stuff like that I could never afford, and non-cracked cymbals and new heads. So I was very careful I remember being nervous and not wanting to whack the shit out of it, because I know that she was not too excited about that. None of them were we're the little brother band, so of course it's like, don't let these little shitheads wreck our stuff.
And we had a reputation already for being that band too.
Right. Yeah.
To the point where later on, Joel Wick, the bassist of Jihad, would not let me use his bass. It was just like the thing that I think to this day is still like, I mean, I would never do that to someone else's equipment. Not even like, no. I would be extra careful. Dan did it for me. Apparently he told me I'm one of the only people that's ever used his bass besides him, which is impressive, because why in the fuck would you lend it to me?
Right.
But, Dan was my friend, so that was very nice of him, and to this day I'm grateful for a lot of things he's done.
Yes, and thank you for a preemptive or a post-emptive, a word that means that. Thank you for letting us use those people that probably are not going to listen to this. But it was cool. Like, as we were saying, this was a like kind of an old frat house. So this living room was giant, and they had enough room to build a fucking stage.
Yeah,
they could roll in and out or whatever they did with it. And so it was really surreal. They moved all the furniture out of there, so there's plenty of room. There's a lot of people there, because it was Ordination of Aaron's last show. So we had a really good.
Yeah, I want to say, I mean, obviously things like that, the first time you experience it, it feels like the biggest, like you might as well be playing fucking Cobo Hall or something. But
yeah, it's very surreal.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I want to say there was at least 100 people there. Which still, fuck, to this day, if I'm in a band and I play to 100 people, I'm super stoked.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. When you get bored of that, I don't know. Something's wrong with it. But anyway, so we played that, and then we just did we even stay or did we go home?
No, we had to drive home, and you rode back again in the van.
Hey, more room to sleep.
Yeah. What I remember is everyone else fell asleep. I drove the whole damn way home, and I just remember stopping along the way several times. I did something I probably couldn't do now, which is just slammed coffee after coffee after coffee and just prayed that I would make it home without an accident. So I drove overnight. I had to work the next day was the even better part, I think.
Classic.
So, yeah, I had to drive. I drove us all back to Kalamazoo with the exception of you. And then I had to work at 4 or 5 that afternoon. I ended up, I don't know how it ended up happening. I basically had to have you call your mom and dad.
Yes, I remember that now because Bill drove back to Kalamazoo, and he's like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Goodbye. And so it's just like, I don't know what to do. This is, obviously pre-cell phones.
Maybe you called Chris's. I don't remember.
I did something. I just remember sitting on his doorstep being like, I don't know. He just went to bed. He was like, I'm out. I want to say, bud.
Yeah, I want to say I walked from Chris's house, which was easily 2 or 3 miles away, to Bill's apartment. And you were sitting there, and I think I was like, okay, I have change in my pocket. I'm going to have to ask you to call your mom and dad on a payphone and ask them to come get us. So they picked us up, and we got a ride back. I got a ride back to my grandparents where I was staying at the time, and I think I stayed up and went to work that afternoon at 5 and came home and slept till noon the very next day. But yeah, I guess, things started moving. Excuse me, things started moving pretty quickly.
Yeah.
For us from that point on. I have to think we played some local shows, but I just don't remember, because between that show in Ohio and our first tour, which basically started at More Than Music Festival in Columbus, Ohio, I don't think there was more than 2 to 3 months between the two. Basically, like I said, I'm sure we played some local shows, but the only local one I remember before we went back to Columbus was we played a show in the basement of this house on Lake Street in Kalamazoo. This band, Basil, from Little Rock, Arkansas, played with us. Yep. And they sounded like Cap'n Jazz. Their drummer now is in a band with Alec Mackay called Hammered Holes, and he's also in Ted Leo's backup band. He's the one who really, I guess, kind of moved on and did some stuff. I'm not sure what the rest of them did. I mean, Matt Worth, the singer, he lived in Philly for quite a while. I don't know what happened to him though. But so them, and I want to say it was also the Promise Ring's first tour. Was it
that show, or was that the other show? Okay, no, so that was that show. Oh, so there's a story in that. Yeah, so we booked this show at this basement, and I want to say maybe 10 people came to it. Maybe. Yeah. It was very sparsely attended for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like it was early in the day too. I remember sunlight coming through the windows.
Yeah, but it was the summertime. So you know what I mean? Like it was the summertime, so like 5 or 6, or 7 or 8, it's still daylight out.
Yeah.
I remember there's a lot of things around that. I had a really bad stomach ache the whole time we were on tour. I don't know why. I'm sure it was just nerves, but I remember I had my aunt drive me to Joe's apartment, and we kind of got ready for tour. You may have already been there. I don't remember. Or you might have been with your, at the time, kind of girlfriend. I don't remember. But yeah, so these people from Little Rock were staying in Joe's apartment. I was staying. Tom Lamacchio of Plunger and the Deadwood Divine, him and our friend Dan, who basically booked our tour, was there. I don't remember much about it other than being exhausted, and then either before or after the show, I think it was after the show, saw all these fucking kids from Arkansas are there, and they're all like, they were the first ones I remember being super into Foursquare, which, if you were there in the 90s, God, I fucking hate Foursquare to this day. No offense to any Foursquare aficionados or anything, but I remember I was laying on Joe's couch, and they came up there and they're like, "Come on, play Foursquare," and I just... I looked at them, and I was so pissed at all of them for just even existing. I mustered up the strength to be as unpleasant as I could be, which was me just saying, "I don't like sports." But
wow.
Yeah. But so the Promise Ring also played the show, and we were always borrowing shit.
True to fashion. Hey man, good set. Can I borrow your snare? And he had a Ludwig. I can't remember. It's a silver one of those fiberglass ones. Snare, yeah. It was a nice Ludwig snare, and it had probably the original strings that were actually holding the snare onto the drum. on there, and he was a tippity tap tapper, and I was clearly not. So I was whacking the shit out of it while we were playing, and the strings gave out and broke. So, long story short, I broke the drummer of the Promise Ring snare, and he was sort of kind of graceful about it. Maybe, he's like, yeah, these things happen. Yeah, and it's like, they're from Wisconsin, people
I think
nicer there.
You only broke one of the strings, though, right?
Well, it was the string that holds the snare on, though. So, like, that's kind of I mean, you can use a fucking shoestring to fix it. It's not that bad if you're a bit, savvy. But I do understand that it's very annoying, and I felt really bad. And
but it's part of our legacy for sure. Destroying other people's equipment.
Yeah. After we just talked about, I wanted to be really careful with it. These other people were like, "Yeah, fuck the Promise Ring, whack,"
I was always, I mean, we were always very sorry and always didn't have the money to pay for repairs.
Sorry. Yes, you got to understand how sorry I am for breaking the thing that you're about to use to play your set. I'm really sorry, but yeah, wow. I mean, so it was embarrassing. I'm not saying I'm like, fuck yeah, ha. I wasn't.
No, but it's funny in retrospect. With 20 plus years of 25 years actually. Yeah. Looking back on it, it is pretty funny.
It is funny, yes. Yeah.
We also at one point booked a band at my house, and we didn't have drumsticks. So we borrowed their drumsticks and broke them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, for A of all, there was a pop punk band, and B of all, they had toothpicks for drumsticks. So it's like, come on, dude. I mean, and they were not happy.
They were not stoked. Well, and the funny thing is, we tried to. That was one of those rare instances where we were able to make it right, and we were going to make it right. It was like, okay, hey, look, there's a practice space a block down the road. We'll go down. We'll get a set of sticks. Yeah. You'll have a pair of sticks to play with, and we'll pay for, pay for replacing your drumsticks.
Right.
But it was almost as if I knew it was going to happen. It's not that I wanted it to happen. I wanted to be friendly with these kids that were kind of new in town. Sure. But, and some of them were actually pretty nice about it. But yeah, it was just like, okay, well, look, we'll get drums. We want you to play. No, we want to go home. Okay, well, here's $30. Here's $30. I don't know, whatever. Like, we don't mean any harm. But they still kept... They were calling pizza deliveries into us, and they left a burger in my mailbox to offend me. Well, that was the thing. They came through and and were like, oh, man, we just ate... We were having a vegan potluck at our house before the show was to start. And we were like, oh, yeah, we got some hummus, and we got this, and we got that. Come, have some food. No, we just ate at Old Country Buffet or something. And they were really bothered by the fact that I was vegan. I don't think any of the rest. Most of us were vegetarian, but yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's jumping ahead. So we played that show and broke the Promise Ring drummer's snare. We got in separate vehicles. I think the thing we would always do is like any chance we could to not be with each other. Like, because we knew we were going to have to be in the same van for like a week and a half. Like, it was just like, okay, I'm going to ride with Adam Kuthi in his station wagon.
Oh, yeah. There. Yeah, we did do that.
Yeah, I think you might have been in the car with me too, because
me and Brandy did that. Yes, because you were sitting in front, and me and Brandy were sitting in the back. Yes.
Yeah, and because we got along, but it was just like, yeah, let's not ride with our other bandmates because we're just going to get in arguments. We kind
of had like a secret, we had a unconscious protection thing. It was like, okay, let's stay apart.
To the degree that like later on in my band careers, we would go on tours and I would make a point to sleep in the van as much as possible, which is something that started with Constantine, honestly.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. So anyways, we didn't have any money. I think we like stocked up on fantastic foods like box hummus mix and box falafel mix. And I think we had, tabbouleh possibly, but maybe tofu scramble. But we had a shitload of that. But it was just going to be like, oh, well, we have to wait till we get to somewhere where we can cook before we can eat this. And what I remember is, for some reason, you had brought along a bag of pita bread.
It goes along with anything.
I don't know if you brought anything else, but you had brought pita bread. And Joe's girlfriend, Katie, she had stolen a Culligan water, but like what was it, a 5 or 10 gallon?
It was a lot. Yes, it was huge.
Yeah, and I had somehow, with practice, gotten really good at like lifting this like 10-gallon jug of water over my head and chugging it.
I like how we treated tour like Dune. Like, okay, we only have this much water of life to like fuck what? No, and then we're all drinking from this huge fucking heavy ass bottle, which was almost full, right?
So I was adamant we were going to bring it on tour, and I was going to drink out of it as some weird way of showing off my prowess as a male or something. I don't know.
Yes.
So because I remember being at a rest stop somewhere in Ohio between Western Michigan and Ohio, and me like getting it out of the back of Adam's parents' station wagon and just lifting it up to my mouth and drinking it with water running down the sides of my face.
Yeah, because you like whenever you want to drink out of it, you had to do kind of a like this power stance just to heave it up anyway, so you look stupid. So you might as well just commit to the bit and just if you're gonna chug, you got to do the stance. So yeah, it made sense at the time.
And so I remember that, and one thing I very specifically remember is showing up. It was at this
Is that a high school?
High school or elementary school, I'm not sure which. It was in their gymnasium. It was in a neighborhood in Columbus called Clintonville. And oddly enough, me and my wife were on a day trip to Columbus because we don't live terribly far from there, about 3 hours. And just kind of driving around the city of Columbus, I passed that fucking school. I was like, that's that fucking school. We pulled up and people were skating a curb. I think like the singer of Three Studies was, and possibly some other people I knew. And then I remember walking up the steps to the school, and Mike Warden from Conquer the World Records had been arrested on his way to the fest, because we haven't talked about this, I don't believe yet, but there was anyone who's listening, I would bet was there, or has heard about it. But there was a period when people salted soda machines.
Yes.
And for some reason, Mike Warden thought it was a good idea. And I have no problem kind of making fun of him because he's a fucking Trump dude now, so fuck him. But like, his dumbass, first of all, he drove down from Detroit on his way to Columbus with his dog. And where the fuck is your dog gonna be during this fucking fest in the summer where it's like, Columbus is close enough to the south to where it's pretty fucking hot in the summer.
Yeah. Well, I remember, people brought ferrets. Just bring your ferrets and your dog to the fest. That's a great idea. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So he was salting soda pop machines in the middle of the day, and I guess some cops just happened to be there when he's standing there with a bottle of salt water in his hand and coins and cans of Coke are being shot out at him.
Yes, for those that don't know, if you take hot warm salt water and spray it into the dollar slot, oh boy, you'll get change. It used to be you'd get change or pop
or both. Well, you would get both. Yeah.
I mean, motherfuckers would do that crazy all the time. Like Justin Pearson of 3-1G. Those guys paid rent doing that shit.
They did, back in the day. And in fact, we financed our demo with money from. I think Joe had went to the Hardings at 1 a.m. around the corner from his apartment, and somehow didn't get caught, which is a miracle because Joe was always getting caught doing things he shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
But
that was a thing.
Yeah. So anyways, he got arrested and basically he had his friends selling whatever like Conquer the World releases they had on hand, being like, we're trying to get Mike Warden bailed out of jail. But the real hard sell they were trying to give was, but really we just, like, if he doesn't get bailed out, his dog is going to be put down. That was like... Jesus. Yeah. Like, at that point, Mike Warden was already, I guess, disliked enough that no one gave a shit if he sat in jail. Which makes me feel bad for him because even though I'm kind of making fun of him and he's a like crazy Trump guy now, he got fucked with a lot, I think. But anyways.
But by the way, the producers of I'm Not Actually a Gas Station Attendant do not condone or endorse the destruction of private property or the theft of any carbonated beverages or money there in the machines. But if you happen to do it, just don't tell them you heard it here.
Yeah, just say that you read in a zine from the mid-90s.
Blame it on the 90s, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the thing I remember. The first night, I remember coming into the venue, and it was the first time I saw Anna Sarka. And that was, like, legit the first time I ever saw, like, a band just fully going all in, like, even more so than we did. Like, I remember them, like... screaming into their pickups.
Yeah, that was cool. I remember that. Was like, wow, that's cool. And
one of them was, and they were hitting their drummer's cymbals with their headstocks, which I did later. Not a great idea. It does fuck up your headstock pretty bad.
And your cymbals,
and your cymbals for sure.
Nobody wins. It looks cool, but nobody wins.
Yeah. So
okay. So wait. Did the spoken word stuff happen yet?
Oh.
I got
some of that happened. Yes,
was that the first day?
Some of it happened the first, and I want to say some of it happened the second.
Okay, it doesn't matter if it's like chronological order. I just got to get this one out because it's like amazing. Yeah. So this was one of the first times I had ever experienced any type of spoken word thing, and there were several of those going on. And for the most part, it was exactly what you think it is. It was exactly like someone's like, hey, you know what? Racism's bad. Sexism's bad. It's not so bad to be a woman, so stop doing bad stuff, etc. Veganism, just things like that you now are probably considered kind of a joke.
Standard.
So we were like, like I remember being like, all right, I'm down for all this information and I want to hear what everybody has to say. So knock me out. So this guy came up with I think he actually had a black T-shirt on that said like "bikers are fucking pussies" or something in the Harley Davidson logo or something. So right off the bat,
if it didn't, that's the way the story is going to be told from here on out.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So like right away, you're like, oh, something's a little off about this person. But anyway, I remember me and my girlfriend at the time were just like, let's sit down right in front. And I want to hear what this guy has to say. He pulls up a wooden chair, kid's chair, stands up on it, drops his pants, grabs the mic, pants and underwear, drops his pants. My dick. And we're just like, shit.
It was an ode to his dick. It was like, my dick. Fucking splendid in its glory.
he said, he's like, my dick feels good sliding in between your sister's tits. And it's like, all right, well, I guess we got to stay here for this because I don't know. It's that Midwestern politeness thing where you're just like, yeah, I guess I got to sit through this whole thing. So we sat through an entire spoken word about that guy's dick.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to make a point. Nobody really got too mad about it. They're just like, well, he seems like a dickhead, but you know what? we'll just let that go. So take that as a
yeah. Well, the year before, Joe, me, Chris, Andy Cornell, and a few other friends all hopped in my gigantic car and went to the More Than Music Fest that year was in Dayton. And what I remember about that specifically was the dudes from Iconoclast. They were all naked. It was a summer in Dayton, meaning, Dayton is very close to Cincinnati, which is literally across the river from Kentucky. It was very hot. It was
hot, yeah.
It was 100 degrees, I'm almost guaranteeing. And they had used a garden hose and made a mudslide and were slipping and sliding around naked. It was really fucking weird. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. But that was I think the first time I had experienced, oh yeah, it's not just me and my buddies fucking doing dick tricks anymore. It's people going out of their way to show off in front of as many people as they can get something about their dick.
Well, and this guy did one up and actually did a spoken word. He might have wrote that down.
He definitely wrote that down. He was taking a stand against the patriarchy, that's for sure.
Apparently, yes.
Yeah. And also Weston played that night, and I remember
underwear.
You were super stoked. Ass Factor 4 played. I don't remember anything else about that night. I just
Did
remember.
Shotmaker play that night?
Might have. It feels like Shotmaker played every show that we ever played.
Yeah. It's like, oh, there's
I mean, that's a
Shotmaker.
bit of an exaggeration, but
yeah. No, seriously.
And
yeah.
They're not a band, just to add a little opinion corner in here, they're not a band that I ever enjoyed listening to on record. Maybe I need to revisit, because maybe I'll be like, oh, this is good. But when they were on live, they were one of the best live bands I've ever saw in my life.
So solid. Yeah, I mean, the drummer sang. That's really cool, but they were just always, I think every time we saw them, I was like, fuck. But yeah, I think I remember listening to the record and be like, nah.
Yeah, they had a really, really good bassist, and their drummer was out of control and also sang. So that was, but it was I didn't give a shit then, and I kind of still don't. I don't need another band to sound like Hoover.
No, yeah.
I didn't, yeah. So, but anyways, they played a lot of fests that we played.
So there. I don't even remember where we slept. Did we just sleep in the van?
We slept in a hotel.
Oh, we slept in a
that was
hotel.
paid for by Brandy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to latch onto friends who kind of had parents with a little bit of money.
A little bit.
Yeah, so that was very fortunate for us because we didn't have any money.
Yeah,
I left on tour with $5 in my pocket.
Dude, that was the modus operandi, man. Always, dude. Barely, even that, if that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I'm completely out of sequence. I just remember there was all that stuff going on. There was straight edge kids in metal t-shirts running around. I think they thought it was ironic at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Who played?
Well, it was maybe ironic, but it was. I mean, it was maybe ironic, but it was mostly just I think that was their I mean, I don't know. I liked Slayer. They liked Slayer. I mean, at that point in time,
it seemed
Slayer
more like on the irony thing.
Yeah, but Slayer was more of an influence on that era of hardcore than Minor Threat ever could be.
Sure.
But yeah, that was the second day. So the second day was the day I was really stoked for. Threadbare played, Frail played, Frail's other band, which
Frail
Mandela Strike Force, played. In fact, there's a video somewhere out there of them playing, and I'm in the video. Threadbare. Chokehold was the big
Chokehold. That's why the kids were running
band
around. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, there were some kind of Courage Crew mosh kids, and moshing at that point in time was that was
verboten.
not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was verboten. And I'd love to see a video. I don't think any exists, but I'd love to see a video because I'd be willing to bet that that many of the people there complaining about their dancing wasn't really that big a deal. They weren't like hitting people. They weren't.
No, it's not like fucking L.A. in 1984 or something.
No,
it's like,
I mean, they were clap dancing, I guess. So it was like one of those things where they'd clap and their arm would go back in sort of a windmill. They may have, it's possible someone could have gotten hit in the nose, and yeah, that sucks. But it really wasn't that big a deal. And honestly, I don't think that those people had any real ill intent other than possibly to annoy us.
Yeah.
So I feel like some of the quotes from that, well, like I want to say Chokehold played 3 or 4 songs. That was supposedly going to be their last U.S. show, and they were going to go on tour in Europe, and then they were going to break up when they got back home. But which didn't happen. They stayed together for at least a full year after that, because I saw them again a few months later. So there was a woman trying to do outreach to the moshers, and the quote that really sticks in my head was, "It's all good. I also listen to Biohazard." Which I don't know what the context was. In fact, I think I met the woman online probably 15 years ago or something and asked her about it. And I don't think she had an answer for it either. But, yeah. So, there was that. And then, so that was Chokehold played, and then there was going to be the lunch. That's something that doesn't happen at fests anymore, from what I can gather. People don't, pat in, a lunch hour anymore. It's you have to time it so that a band you don't really give a shit about seeing is playing.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're lucky 2 or 3 of them in a row, and then you can just go and either get takeout or so anyways, there was a lunch hour, and there was going to be many spoken words during the lunch hour, which is where that may have been when the My Dick guy came up. It may have been. I feel like it was the day before. It's been so long now.
Yeah.
But so what I remember specifically was there was some feminists giving a speech. I want to say it was Lesbian Avengers, one of those groups. In me saying that, I was seriously that was the actual name of a group within the colleges at the time.
Yeah, we're not poking fun.
Yeah, we definitely aren't. But they wanted to have a safe space for women where women could talk about their whatever struggles and how it sucks to try to exist in a male dominated scene and blah 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 blah. Anyways, there was a male that decided for some reason he really, really, really wanted to be involved in the conversation.
Oh, God, I remember this. Yes.
It was overbearing and obnoxious. He was just he's why can't I? Because you can't. What could he kept going
dealing with a 10-year-old.
Yeah, and the woman is getting more and more riled the more and more he just is an asshole. And at some point she's you are an asshole and you have a 3-inch penis, to which he pulled out his dick to show her, which made, oh man, that was so fucking weird and so surreal and so God.
And that wasn't the My Dick guy? Jeez.
No,
he could have killed 2 birds with 1 stone of being an offensive asshole, if he just would have done that. But
yeah, he could have. But I think he was trying to smash the patriarchy with his cock. I think that guy was just trying to smash. But anyways.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so then I don't know if we played first after the lunch break. I know we played early on.
Yeah.
And,
it was definitely
we were so unfashionable. We had all decided we were going to dye our hair before we left on tour, because the summer before that was the thing. You would see bands, and every band like everybody bought some Manic Panic before tour, and they were going to like live it up with green hair on tour. So that's what we did, and no one else did it that summer
except for me. I didn't do it.
Oh.
And it caused a minor stir within our outfit. They're like, come on, because I was like, no, my parents will get really mad at me. And they're like, come on, do it.
Didn't you dye your hair black?
I dyed my hair black later, yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought you did for that tour.
When we had caught up with the times, I definitely dyed my hair black. But
I had green hair. Me and Chris had green hair. And like, Chris at the time had really like crazy big sideburns, and he kind of looked like Oscar the Grouch. And then Joe had blue hair. I remember
I was supposed to have blue hair too.
Yeah, and I remember like Chris being like kind of real quickly realized like feeling really stupid for having green hair and like debating on going to a like place and dyeing his hair black while on tour. It didn't happen, thankfully, but so we played, and this is where, man, we kind of got involved in shit that was way deeper than we intended to get involved. So we played the show, and then there was a spoken word from Aragorn, who is now dead, R.I.P. I don't remember what it was about. It was just kind of like talking about community and blah,
positive
blah, blah.
Aragorn stuff.
Yeah, or what seemed positive at the time. And he did some yo-yo tricks for good measure. But so there was a woman from Michigan, and there was a woman from Maryland, from Crofton, Maryland, I believe. We were friends with both of them, but they, after we played, outed a guy who was kind of a sleazeball rapist in the scene, which led to a letter being written to Heart Attack. So there was I think the first public call out of a rapist at a big punk rock hardcore show was kind of on our watch. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't think it's a bad thing. It was a really like surreal moment in our lives, I think.
It was a big deal because we knew, we went on to know those people that were involved, at least one of the people. And,
both of them, actually, yeah.
Okay. And it was, I just remember like it was an all over Heart Attack. Like there were flyers printed out and put like in like mailed with records like, hey, this person is bad. It was
kick his ass.
It was crazy. That was like really like a big turning point.
And for us, like being teenage and early 20s, we were like, and not having like, I mean, at that point I hadn't even kissed a girl, much less had sex with them, and and was really doing my best to not be construed or be sexist.
Right.
So it was all very like, what? People act this way?
It was we've talked about this many times before, but like when you're a socially awkward male and you're already like confused by like women and how to act around them and stuff like that. And then you add on, feminism and like the patriarchy and awareness, all that stuff. Now, I'm not making light of that at all. I'm just saying like it added another dimension of like, holy shit. Yeah, I need to be on my absolute best behavior. And I was just fucking terrified.
It's like that bit.
And I'm not trying to whine and be like, oh, poor me or anything like that. It was just like, I just remember being like, okay, we really need to focus on not.
We were scared little boys, and I'm not like, it's nothing against, no one needed to change the way they talked. It was just, but for us, we were scared shit. I mean, it's like that 40-year-old virgin bit. Like, I respect women so much, I don't talk to them or look at them.
Yeah. I mean, it was almost kind of on that level. So,
like, definitely did my best to avert the male gaze, yet wanting to talk to girls nonstop, but like really being afraid of being, it
was weird. It was real weird. Yeah.
It was a very delicate balance to hold. And some people did it. I didn't have the sophistication to do it, I guess. So I just basically was, kind of kept to myself on that
Same.
end, I guess. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time I had a girlfriend, so it was like whatever, but it was still like there was a lot of hurdles to jump, and it was very.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big learning curve. Anyway.
Yeah. So and I had brought in the big Culligan
magnum of water.
Which I believe I also brought out when we played, that I could chug it before we played.
Yes, we passed it around. We passed it around because it was hot, and we were like, "Oh, I'm going to need that water." So it was very awkward to heft this solid plastic ass huge bottle and just get doused in everybody else's backwash and water anyway. So.
It didn't matter. This was pre-COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, those pre-COVID times when you could get someone else's spittle all over you.
But so what I remember is we played and we did pretty well. I remember it being like people coming up to us and being like every single one of us and being like, "Oh, you guys are awesome!" And it made me like super stoked because I got to talk to people because I was never gonna approach someone and talk to them personally.
Yeah, same.
But like. I think they would approach you and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, talk to one of my bandmates."
Praise goes over there. Yeah, I'm going to take this. Yeah,
I think it would be because they would try to be like, "Oh, you should come play a show in our town," and you'd be like, "Yeah, talk to one of those people with colored hair." But we played and things went well. We put our equipment in the back room. We loaded it back out into the van, but for some reason we forgot the water bottle. So we show up bright and early to the school on Sunday morning, which was the big day where like Portraits of Past and Christie Front Drive and Rye Coalition and I think Crudos, they all played. So anyways, we got there and the school decided that show was not happening there on the third day. And so I think what had happened is some crust punks had broken into the school or tried to maybe sleep there. So anyways.
I mean, you got to kind of understand. Yeah, it was a school and there were a shit ton of kids all over the place, just milling around on the yard and like everywhere. Of course, it's not going to like work out. I'm sure someone somewhere got pissed at even if it wasn't the school. So it's kind of understandable why.
It could have been noise for all we know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was in the gymnasium, wasn't it? Was that the lunchroom or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And there was so many liability issues. I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was just so many of them. I don't know how they got into. God damn it! To begin with.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's amazing that they did, and it's kind of funny to have this conversation now. We're like, well, the liabilities and the noise ordinance. You don't fucking think of that when you're a kid, and we didn't think of that. We're like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
So long story short, it got shut down, so it had to move to
the Neal House.
Yeah, right back to the house we played our show at. Yeah.
But the bummer was all of our equipment was loaded, but for like I said, we had forgotten the water bottle. So that R.I.P. Culligan water bottle.
R.I.P. our hydration shtick.
So that day we watched Rye Coalition and just a bunch of bands. I don't remember much about it.
I believe I saw Rye Coalition through an open window. There were so many people there to see Rye that like I couldn't get in there, so I watched them through an open window. And the singer was doing his thing. Speaking of like doing the windmill clappy thing, he was doing his rock and roll
Elvis Presley thing, yeah.
Pete Townsend arms windmill thing, and he hit somebody. And he was genuinely upset. He was like, I'm really like, they were still playing, and he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like I could see it in his face. And he was like mouthing like, are you okay? I'm really sorry. And it was just like, this is like kind of weird moment. I mean, because it was innocent. He didn't mean to do it. But like, I know that band had gotten a lot of shit
later for being jerks.
For being jerks, but they did not seem like it, at least at that time. And I don't think they were, honestly.
No.
Like I've read interviews and they're like, Yeah, people like to talk shit on us, and it's kind of unfounded, and that sucks. Probably because of the, like they're on Trouble Man and they're from New Jersey and blah, 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 all that crap. But like, they
Did
always
Trouble Man have a bad reputation for
I don't know. I
like,
just it's.
So, yeah, I mean, I remember very little about that day except for like being like, oh, now we're going to travel across, well, not really across the country. We're going to go to the Eastern Seaboard.
It felt like across the country, and I kind of had a bit of a breakdown, like a private breakdown in the van, because I was really overwhelmed by the fact that I don't even know. I think I don't know how to describe. I mean, again, from the past stories, like if I couldn't handle hanging out with people, which was like 90% of the time, I'd just go to sleep as a kind of thing. And it was getting really overwhelming because I couldn't get away from all the people. And I really kind of had a hard time there right before we left again. So, but then I got that out and we left.
Well, yeah, and what you were saying about watching Rye through a window, I was in the room when they were playing. I vaguely remember him hitting someone on mistake, but I remember watching Christie Front drive through that window. Sitting, it was almost like a drive-through, like drive-in movie, because I was like sitting in the van, like watching Christie Front Drive play.
Yeah. Which that's a good viewing of Christie Front Drive. You don't need to be there.
No,
you don't need to be right in front of them. You can be seeing through a window. Like, hey, that's nice music. This nice gentle music you guys are playing. I'll be back here. Thank you.
Yeah. So we drove that night to Knoxville, Tennessee, which Knoxville, Tennessee is freakishly played into my life in a way that I never would have thought it would have.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my wife's from there, so I'm there kind of a decent amount more than I ever thought I would be in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
But we played in the Thumbnail House.
Yeah, the kitchen.
The kitchen.
Sort of the kitchen.
I remember they were very gracious, like, relatively speaking. I think they had a shitload of like foam that you could use as a mattress. I remember sleeping on these foam like pads in the kitchen.
Yeah, the kitchen. The reason I say kitchen, and I actually did the air quotes that you can't see, but the reason I did that is because it had carpet. It kind of looked like a living room, but it had a stove and a fridge in there. But it was it was bigger than your average kitchen, so it was kind of odd. And then plus we played in there, so it was very like weird.
It was in a neighborhood my wife later told me is called the Fort, which is kind of like just the student ghetto of University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, I remember there being a big hill. Oh, there was this young woman that we were kind of friends with. Chris was tight with her. I think they may have had sort of a like unrequited like sort of love
kissy
thing.
Time.
Yeah, love thing that never really happened, but like
man, Love Thing, good song.
Yeah, but I think they were kind of into each other, but it just the stars never aligned. But she, for some reason, rode down. Did you ride with the Thumbnail guys down to Knoxville?
I don't think so.
I don't think you did either, but she did, and maybe Andy Cornell, who was our roadie. I forgot to mention that. Andy was with us. And, I just remember it being at the top of a hill, and I remember Andy and her both somehow had skateboards, and they both tried bombing the hill, and I think she like ate shit. Like midway down this gigantic hill, she ate shit.
Wow.
I could be wrong, but yeah, I feel like that might have happened. And she was just sort of a free spirit. She wasn't with us for the whole tour. She was just with us for the, like, I think we were in Knoxville for 3 days, because that's the thing. We call it a tour, but really, what did we play? Like, I think we played 4 shows other than the fest in our hometown show.
It was a long vacation, yeah.
Yeah, and it was honestly, it was awesome. Like, we just got to hang out with people and then play a show every day or two.
Yeah. Also in Knoxville, we met the rhythm guitarist of Weezer's sister.
Yeah. She
was wearing a Darth Vader shirt and burgundy pants, and she was complaining that people called her Weezer Girl.
She was very cute, as I recall, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember. And yeah, look at all my hard work on trying to not be sexist got me. I mean, God, come on, you guys all know I'm just whatever. Anyways, I don't remember much about. We played the show. Oh, there was a dude who would write letters to like Maximum Rock and Roll. I forget his name now, but he was like super punk, like leather jacket, like band logos all over. And he would write Tennessee scene reports to MRR, talking about how dead Knoxville's scene was. And we met him there. He was a nice guy. I mean, there was a lot of crust punks in Knoxville for some reason.
Interesting. Weird.
But I don't remember much about it. It was just some show. And
did we play with Thumbnail or did we play with Atom Bomb Pocket Knife?
We didn't play with either. What it was Thumbnail, their drummer, who I think was also in Chino Horde, possibly. He was going to school at UT, and he had some like foreign travel where he was basically gone for 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
So they had a band that they did with a different drummer that was basically, it might as well have been Thumbnail, but I think they wrote a whole set of other songs and recorded a demo. I want to say they were called New Action 4, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Was that their name?
I don't remember. That sounds right though.
Yeah, but they sound just like Thumbnail. They sounded like Drive Like Jehu, very much of that sort of thing.
I remember one of the guitarists showed us a cool trick. He's like, "Yeah, the JCM 900. If you stick your pickups right near the power supply or something, it makes this insane.
Yeah,
it's not just like feedback. It's like this weird." I don't even self-isolating, just crazy noise.
Yeah, I remember that because they did it live, and I was just like, "Whoa!"
Yeah. Actually, I think Rye Coalition did that too. I think that might be on that 7-inch. That if you listen to that weird sound is.
Oh yeah. That our love will never die, baby. Yeah. Baby got new. Whatever. That song. It's a good song. Yeah, I think, at least according to the dude from Thumbnail, like, it was that amp and that amp only. Like, only JCM 900s will do that. But who knows? So we played Knoxville. I think we stayed for another day or something.
We went swimming in an apartment complex.
We broke into a pool and went swimming. I do remember that.
Yep.
And actually,
there's another story of I don't know if it was when we got there or if it was the next day or something, but we went back to the van, and I had like cut off Dickies and probably some low top Chuck Taylors or something, and I didn't have a shirt on, and I walked around the corner and like leaned against the van, and I was like, so what are we gonna do? And like Joe and Chris just
it looked like
laughing.
A Minor Threat picture.
They're like, what's up, Minor Threat? And like, I was like, what? They're like, you look like fucking somebody in Minor Threat right now.
You had a pair of cut off Dickies, and like your boxers, as was the style at the time for all of us, was just hanging ever so slightly above the belt line. If I remember right, on that tour, for some reason, on both of our tours, you had a problem with having shoes on.
I had an aversion to footwear for some reason.
Yeah.
I wasn't even trying to be a hippie or anything. I was just like, I don't know.
You had, what it was I think Norm had a pair of Simples he had given you that were dyed red.
No. That was the second tour. Those were Airwalks.
No, I'm pretty sure it was the first tour.
Are you sure?
You would not wear them because they turned your feet red.
Yeah, though, I mean, I don't want red feet.
So, you didn't wear shoes.
That's right, because I left them in the hotel. One of those hotels that Brandy's parents rented for us.
But I don't know how, but somehow you had to have had shoes at some point because we walked around D.C., and I'm certain you were not barefoot that whole time.
No.
But definitely from all the way from Columbus to and through East Tennessee, you did not have on a pair of shoes.
You know what? I think I had slippers that Joe had. I had they're like plaid slippers with crappy rubber bottoms, like backless slippers. I was like, fuck it, this is what I'm wearing.
You definitely did for the second tour, but you definitely may have for that one as well.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah. So yeah, we got in our van and drove what felt like 3 days to DC area.
Which I think I had to have slept 90% of that drive.
Oh, I want to say I slept 75 to 80 myself. I never slept as well as I did on that tour, and I don't know why that was.
And that was the one where the van that we toured in on that first tour was small. It was not, and that's small for a van. And I mean, it was kind of a cargo van kind of a deal, but it was small, and our amps were piled in there. There was not a lot of room. There was a bench seat, and I was sleeping on the amps.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, yeah, and they were like, okay, I'm kind of worried about him being up there. So I think you guys tried to wake me up, and apparently I just, in my sleep, just kind of slithered down under the seat and just slept under the bench.
This is how I remember that story. Oh, and let me just step back for a second. On our way from Columbus to Tennessee, I was driving. And I guess we got into Knoxville, and I stopped at a gas station to get directions to the Thumbnail House. And it was raining, and I was coming up the on-ramp, and apparently brought the van up onto just 2 tires. So at that point, Daniel, who was basically the dad of the tour, refused to let us drive the van for the rest of the time he was with us. So we drove from Tennessee to Maryland with him driving the whole way. And I don't know how long. I'm just curious. I'm going to find out. It was only 7 hours and 15 minutes. But for some reason, it felt like we were in the vehicle for 18 hours. And we all slept most of it. I think And what I also remember is that Chris had Andy buy a boombox for us for the road because we didn't have a working car stereo in the van. And we only had a couple of tapes. So we listened to this band from Little Rock that was short-lived called Generation of Vipers.
Oh, yeah.
We listened to their demo over and over and over and over. And then it would be then it was Moss Icon over and over and over, and then it was just that over and over again. Fucking one band, basically listened to 2 or 3 bands that whole fucking tour. And but anyways, so I remember what you're talking about sliding down. We were somewhere in the mountains in Virginia on our way up to Maryland. And it was raining. It rained most of that tour. It was actually pleasantly cool for that time of year. It was June or July, and I want to say that the temperatures were in the 60s. It was really very pleasant. But anyways, we were driving up these hills, and it's rainy, and Daniel's freaking out. He doesn't want. Because basically, we all know, if he were to have to slam on his brakes, you would have most certainly been you would have flown off the speaker cabinet directly through the windshield.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, we were trying to wake you up, and you just you slid off of the Marshall cab down the middle of the seat that we were all sitting on, and then laid down on the floor.
I think I crawled under the bench seat.
That's a possibility. So yeah, we got to Maryland, and we stayed at Tom Lamacchio's house. And
I stayed in the van and slept for I don't know how much more longer.
I think I slept in the van for a while too. But in fact, it was crazy because the Lamacchio children's parents were literally never there. I think they would show up at 11 o'clock at night and be out of the house before we were ever awake. So it was insane.
Yeah, it was. I don't remember ever meeting them. Yeah.
Oh no, definitely did not meet.
It was real weird because I woke up and I didn't know where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was in the van when I woke up, so I was like, well, we're parked in this driveway. I think we're at this house, so I'm going to walk up to this house and knock on the door. I'm not just going to walk in because I don't even know if this is the right house. And I did, and thankfully somebody answered the door. I think it was Tom or Joe or somebody answered the door that was nice, and was like, hey, come on in. And you guys were laughing at me because I was like, what? Half awake.
Well, what I also remember is that because Daniel had driven the whole, I'm guessing it was 8 hours, maybe it was 10, because I feel like we made stops to look at tourist shit. Like we went to the land bridge in Virginia. And he got mad because the rest of us didn't want to get out and go check out the land bridge.
Truly a tour dad. Yes.
Yeah. Which actually we couldn't have anyways because it had been raining so much. It was rained out. But we got to Maryland, to suburban Maryland, and he went into a bedroom and slept for 12 hours straight. And Joe, I remember, like walking around the house in a pair of pajamas and dubbing tapes off of Tom's stereo, like just random. Oh, you have this demo? Let me record that.
Wow.
Like, yeah. And I think I just laid on their couch and watched TV.
I remember specifically they're like, do you want snacks? And they just have this huge bowl of snacks.
Oh, yeah.
It's always full of snacks.
Well, because his parents worked in, I want to say, in the vending machine business.
They were doing good, too, because that house was nice.
Oh, yeah, it was a nice place.
But, yeah, there was all kinds of, like, hey, you want some chips or spearmint gum? And like, whoa, what? All right, sure. Wow.
Well, and I remember it was probably one of the cushiest places we ever stayed on any tour I've ever been on. Yeah. Like, I remember one night I actually did sleep. They had like a basement rumpus room where we could sleep, and I think I did that one night. But I also one night remember sleeping in the van, and I don't know why. I was just like, oh, I'm bored. I don't want to be around people. I'm going to sleep in the van.
Yeah.
And I just remember like laying there. And I guess like those kids, including our bandmates and probably including you, would just sleep. I'm like, God, it's got to be like 11 a.m. or noon, and no one's like, there's no sign that anyone's alive.
Yeah.
And I'm scared shitless that like, like the parents are home, and I really don't want to have the awkward conversation with some person's parents who I assume are cool with us being there, but I have no way of knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just remember they actually dropped off some like records, like the UPS man dropped off records on their doorstep, and that, yeah, it was so weird. But anyways, we
went out on the town, right?
Yeah, we went to Georgetown to hang out. I don't know why. I mean, just because we were in DC.
I mean, we got to see the Exorcist stairs. Father Karras, the one that he falls down. Spoiler alert: he falls down in the end, and it looked just like the movie. Like there's steam coming out, and it was like ominous, and it was great. So like,
well, and when I lived in DC for 7 years, I took pretty much every touring band to see the Exorcist steps. It's like, oh, you want to see the Exorcist steps? Some of them would want to see the White House. I'd take them to the White House, but yeah, most people seemed more interested in the Exorcist steps than the White House or the Capitol building.
Sure.
But yeah, there was a woman out there who I actually was still in Georgetown when I moved there several years later. But she was on some weird thing about that Children of the Corn was actually a biographical story. The CIA was training children to be killers and moved them out to cornfields.
It was about Watergate. Yeah, it was about Watergate. It was all the children of the people that were involved in Watergate, their kids got programmed to kill them.
And then there was some jarhead asshole who just
But this lady had these signs up, like, all on these trees, like for like half a block or something, and she was really like into telling anybody who would listen. And so we stopped, and we wanted to hear about, this crazy story because it was fascinating. And then all of a sudden, these drunk Marines came up and they're like, don't listen to her, man. Nixon was a man. Nixon was a man. And we're like, what the fuck, dude? We're just trying to listen to this lady's story. We're not giving, like what? And
one of them threatened to beat you up.
Well, I think Joe said nobody said Nixon wasn't a man. What are you talking about? Which egged them on further. Yeah. And then it kind of cooled down and they started walking away, and like a little shit that I was like, okay, bye. And that honked them off real bad. And they were like coming back. I was like, what, 17 years old or something? You're going to beat the shit out of us.
Even that old, yeah.
Or 16. But. So we narrowly avoided getting our asses kicked by some Marines.
Yeah.
In Georgetown, and then that was at night, and then I think the next day we walked around and we ended up seeing, in succession, Newt Gingrich walking by, and then a Czechoslovakian children's TV show being filmed at the same time.
Yeah,
so basically the same thing.
I think that day we somehow got dropped off on the mall in DC.
Yeah,
and we walked around. I remember we were all broke and hungry. And Andy Cornell bought us all bagels at some shop like on Capitol Hill. It was the first time I had ever had hummus on a bagel, and it was like it was unbelievable to me. It was so good.
It was an epiphany, yeah.
It was an epiphany for sure. So, and then we played that night at...
played at a VFW, right?
Like a VFW or something like that on Capitol Hill. It's no longer there, actually, strangely, but we played there with Portraits of Past. I want to say it was the first Sleepy Time Trio show.
Oh, huh.
I mean, they definitely played it, and the thing was at the time, people were telling us, it's like, oh yeah, it's the new Maximilian Kolbe band.
Yeah,
like, awesome. And but I think it might have been their first show.
And I remember we were sitting outside on the van for some reason, and a black dude in a Stetson hat came up, just like magically appeared and started singing "Play That Funky Music, White Boy," just clapping his hands, got everybody clapping, and then he just left. Like as soon as he appeared, he just disappeared.
There's a lot of that happens a lot in DC. There was a character that would run around near where the Wilson Center was, who went by the name Blelvis. He was Black Elvis, and he didn't look like Elvis. He didn't try to look like Elvis, but he could do that voice perfectly.
Yeah.
And he would do things like meet you when you're walking through the neighborhood, be like, give me 3 words and I'll associate them with an Elvis song, and then I'll sing you the Elvis song. So wow. It was crazy. So anyways, we played in DC with Sleepy Time Trio and
Portraits of Past,
which
I remember
Christie
nothing
Front
about.
Drive play.
I think so. I don't remember anything about that show other than I didn't have a drum rug, and since it was like a VFW, the floor was tile and it was and we were sliding everywhere. Other than that, nothing about that show.
I don't remember much about it either. It was fine. It was cool.
I think all the events surrounding that were so much more exciting than the actual show.
Yeah, and then we got in a vehicle and drove to Pennsylvania. Well, actually to New Jersey. Oh, no. We drove to Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
We played a show in some kid's basement whose parents were out of town, so he decided to do a show. It was us and this band Milkweed, who's apparently their 7-inch is quite the desirable Scrams record now.
At one point it was. Yeah, I don't know if it still is.
It's a good record. I mean, I don't know. It's cool. But
we played in this kid's parents' house, and it was like the epitome of the rumpus room, like deep shag carpet.
It
nice,
was amazing.
Clean. The kid was super nice. The kid was super helpful.
It was air conditioned, which was awesome.
Yeah, I think we were cooking food, and we saw like deer and rabbits wandering through his backyard as we were cooking.
Yeah.
And it was very pleasant. And then, I don't know how many kids showed, 10 maybe?
10 and basically he was kind of the whipping boy. It came to, it came to our attention he was the whipping boy. So there were definitely people who showed up just to fuck with his house while his parents were out of town.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, dork. And then they just wrecked it. Yeah. And it was kind of sad.
Doing upper deckers and shit. I mean, I don't know that they did that, but you know what I'm saying. And so I remember very little about that other than we played in this room with beautiful soft carpeting. I played barefoot because it felt so nice. And there was, I think this is probably bad, but at the time it didn't even occur to me, even though I was vegan even back then. But like, we played right next to an aquarium, like a, like 20, 30 gallon aquarium with fish in it. That probably wasn't the raddest thing, but
I broke a stick, and I was like, I broke a stick. Does anybody have an extra stick? And nobody volunteered an extra stick, so the kid from the house offered up a chair leg. So I played the remainder of the set with maybe the dowel like in between, not like but it was big enough to be a stick. But yeah, so it tore the shit out of my heads, and that's what I was left with is that. So,
oh god.
So, and then Milkweed gets on, and again, there's nobody there. There's maybe like those kids that came to fuck with the dude's house left, and there's like 5 people there or whatever. So Milkweed gets on, and they don't give a fuck. And they had 2 weird roadies. I want to think they had
roadies 2 weird roadies for a local show in a basement.
Yeah, so they had 2 weird people that like this kid had like a really bad scar across his face, like really deep, and a girl. I want to say she had a bad scar too or something. I'm not sure, but
I want to say her name was Monica. I don't remember a scar, but her name, I believe, was Monica.
She had blonde hair. I remember that.
Yeah, and she was very unfriendly to us. I remember Andy Cornell being like Mr. like gregarious, like she was wearing a Weston shirt, and he's like, "Oh, you're wearing a Weston shirt? We love Weston." And maybe she perceived it as him being like, because on the East Coast, people don't be nice to people like way, like generally speaking. So she was kind of like, whatever, Then I think she became kind of enamored of Joe, possibly. And then later, when I lived in Chicago, she lived in Chicago. And I like brought that up to her, how rude she was to us in 1995. And she was like, "Oh, yeah, I was probably mad at my boyfriend. We'd probably been fighting. I don't know. I'm sorry." I'm like, it's all good. But like,
so this band was playing, and like their weird roadie dude was, I don't know he was just bored too. So he started throwing their own records at the band.
I think one of them was in that band Spirit Assembly, one of the dudes that came along, and he had like dyed his eyebrows like in stripes. So I think his natural hair color for his eyebrows was blonde, and he had little black stripes in them.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just, I could be totally wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Like, why would I have that weird memory if it wasn't real? But
and then. The questionable story, but we should just do it because it was pretty funny at the time. So as after the show, we're hanging out. There is an attractive girl there,
very attractive,
and she was
lady,
very nice, and
very
she
sweet.
Really wanted to talk to us. So of course we're going to talk to her. It was like, wow, we're getting the signals that it's okay to talk to this person, and we're having a good time talking. And I think at one point Andy's like, "I'm horny," just out of nowhere. And I think almost right directly after that, she's like, "I'm 15," and everybody went and just kind of did the Homer Simpson fade into the bushes.
She might have even been 14, but she didn't. She did not look it.
She didn't look like it, and everybody just kind of went nope, and just like that was it was awkward because that conversation just immediately dissolved, and everybody just kind of backed away.
And in Andy's defense, it wasn't like a weird like.
No, it wasn't. He wasn't trying.
He wasn't trying to hit on her. That's the way that.
That's just Andy.
And it's just the way we all interacted together. Like we would have in-depth conversations about jerking off. So I mean,
like our little circle, that was normal, but we soon found out that was not normal. Amongst other people, and we, even as we got older, it's like, oh, people don't always talk like this. So we
people don't talk about their first experiences jerking off and go into hour-long tirades.
Right. Or painting with the,
with the reproductive matter.
Yeah. It's, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was a fun show. We drove to Daniel's parents, which, again, we ended up in a nice house.
In Voorhees, New Jersey.
Right across the river from Philly, I believe. But I don't know why. But again, I think his family was on vacation. Like, his parents weren't there. He had a sister. She wasn't there. And there was a weird argument that happened because I think Joe or Chris maybe gave Daniel shit for liking Rage Against the Machine. He had a Rage Against the Machine poster on his wall, and he got really offended by it. And yeah, it was weird.
And didn't he just go in his room and not come out?
Yeah, he did. And also another thing that we couldn't figure out how to do, but I think we tried to rent porn on his...
No, we didn't. No, it was scrambled porn.
It was scrambled porn, but if we could have found a way to actually rent it, we would have, I'm sure.
Yeah, but we did watch scrambled pornography.
Yeah, which isn't... Yeah. So, yeah, and then we got in the van again, and drove to the Jersey Shore. We drove to Tom's River, and I don't know. We played there. So we played in a house that we found out after the fact apparently was very haunted. Again, it was like some sort of probably fraternity house. We played in their basement. It was like this weird rumpus room type of thing.
A lot of rumpus rooms on that tour.
Yeah, but it was all tile. Tile ceilings, tile floor, and they would, in the summer, as it was then, they had to mop down the floors and the ceilings in between bands because it would get so damn humid.
Yeah.
But we played, that was with Portraits of Past and Christie Front Drive and
Ethel Meserve.
And
Planet Labia.
Which was friends of Ethel Meserve, believe it or not.
Yes. So,
yeah.
Planet Labia.
I don't remember much about them at all, other than they were a pop punk band. Maybe some other bands played, but I just can't remember. I feel like
it seemed like there were more. Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought it was polite to stand up and watch a band, and I think Tom's River, New Jersey, was the first time I ever noticed bands, like people literally just sitting on the floor crisscross applesauce, like watching the bands play. It was really fucking weird.
Yeah.
But let's see, I don't remember much about that. I remember we got fries from the boardwalk and we were all pissed at each other. You and Chris had a big argument and we almost broke up.
So we were pissed before we played?
Yeah. Well, okay. After or before, I can't remember.
I seem like
we were always angry at each other.
But I think we were mad beforehand because, like, my actions, especially during that show, I was upset.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I'm pretty sure we mentioned it in the first episode. But our friend Henry had bought me a drum set, which was very nice.
Yeah.
And also, just completely out of the blue, no pun intended, he bought me a blue Vistalite drum set,
mm-hmm.
which was really nice. So I was playing that, and if you don't know Vistalite, it's plastic. It's a plastic drum set. They're great, but it was a pocket, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. But so we were playing, and as was the style at our time, we would kind of destruct, and I think I destructed during the middle of the set, and I grabbed one of those toms and fucking threw it at the kids sitting down on the fucking floor and smashed that. I remember people jumping out of the way because I threw it, and I fucking Pete Townsend my hi-hat stand and bent the shit out of my hi-hats, and we were not happy.
And I don't know, I think it was just that you were young. I mean, I was too, but you were young and you didn't really know how to handle your emotions, and you probably didn't even know what you were feeling. I mean, maybe it was just that you were just like, fuck, I'm gonna have to go back to the real world again. Like,
I don't.
This tour is over.
It's a little. It's I don't know. It's a little different than that, but like it was hard to deal with, and it was also weird being far away from home and not feeling like you didn't have a base. Like it was kind of weird. So it was hard to get used to. I mean, I was feeling like 15 or 16, and you know. Yeah,
for me, I think I was almost immediately like enjoyed touring just because it was like I never. It's sort of weird to say this, but I don't really ever feel like I had like that base in that way. Like it wasn't like, I'm not saying I wasn't like close with my parents, but I wasn't really that close with my parents. And it was like, oh, well, I can go somewhere where people, generally speaking, are pretty like stoked to meet me. And that's something I've never experienced in my life. That's awesome. Fuck.
I think a succinct way to put it for me is a sensory overload. We saw so much stuff, despite the fact that we played like 4 or 5 shows.
Yeah,
and it was a lot to process, so it was really difficult to. And Chris and I were always at some sort of.
Well, and Chris and I were as well. Yeah, it was just a thing. We were young. I don't, and I think we sort of. Strangely, like we played that show. That was the last show of the tour. We drove back to Michigan.
Well, hold on. We sat in the van and we had like a really heavy heart to heart, and then up walks Scott Bybin to quell this not with kind words or with rationality, but just jibber jabber. He came up and said some shit, and I think we were so confused after what he said, and then he just kind of floated off as he did. That we forgot why we were mad at each other and just went home.
You know what? At this moment, like the thing that I remember to this day about that fucking show and Scott's pep talk was he was wearing a shirt that said Marx and Lenin, 2 great minds of our time, and the picture was of Groucho Marx and John Lennon.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just remember him saying, like, you guys are like a storm, like, rolling in over the coast, like, just some shit that, like, what? Okay.
Yeah, and maybe we were. But,
we were good for crops. You're right, yes.
I remember we got in the van, I think it was at night, and we just drove back. It was such a, like, unceremonious ending to it. Like, it was just like, all right, we're going to get along for this next 12 hours drive or however long it was.
Yeah, a long time.
It was fine. It was fine. It was just such a weird, like, everything was weird. And I think we got to, like, somewhere like Marshall or somewhere in Michigan, maybe Jackson, and we all decided at that moment we still had just a teensy bit of money from tour. So we treated ourselves to Subway subs as our last time together as a band for that stretch of time, because it wasn't like we were going to break up. It was just that we were everybody knows that feeling of getting back from being on the road. Even with us, it was like maybe a week and a half, but it was just such a nice feeling to sleep in your own bed.
Oh, yeah.
And like not, everybody loses weight on tour. Like none of us were any exception to that. We were ready to get home, sleep in our own bed, like eat food that someone prepared for us, that kind of thing. So like, so that, and then ironically we got back, and I want to say that our first 7-inch had come out in the time that we were on tour. Like we got copies. I think so. Our next show, I want to say, one of our next shows at least, was in Indianapolis in that same summer with Daredevil. Yeah, so we definitely drove to Indy to play with Daredevil, and it was that band Hearst's last show. They were, in fact, I think that might have been the shortest set I've ever seen in my life. I don't think they got through one full song.
Okay,
before.
hold on. Was it their show? Was it their house?
No, some kid
Okay.
who lived in suburban Indianapolis. His parents were really, really supportive and nice. Were like, oh, yeah, you can have shows in our basement. We'll just stay upstairs and watch movies. And I don't know, maybe they were having sex. I don't know. But like, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can have, just leave us alone upstairs and you can have, 50 to 60 of your friends in our basement and play loud music. Yeah, that's totally cool. Like,
and it was. I remember it being it was a very gray day. It was a very just gray neighborhood, and it was it was kind of a small, cramped basement. It was very clean, and I think we were playing like sandwiched in between a furnace and a wall or something.
Yeah, I can't even remember anymore but yeah, I remember showing up there, and I think Bill gave us our copies of our 7-inch at that show. And Hearst played. I want to say they may have made it a minute. Basically, it was already their last show, but the dude, one of the guitarists, not Ben Shine, the other guitarist whose name I just can't remember anymore, he was really known for going off, and to the point where it was really annoying them as a band. So I think literally 30 seconds into their first song, their guitarist I'm speaking of, stood up on top of the bass drum and launched himself off and started hitting his guitar and making noise. And basically they stopped and were like, I'm fucking sick of this. And just basically that was it. That was the last song they ever played.
And they all had, I remember when they started, before they started playing, we were like, wow, that guy has a white SG with 3 gold pickups in it. That guy has a really nice Thunderbird bass, and that guy has a really nice Les Paul. And they, within 30 seconds, just threw their shit everywhere. The bass player, hung his bass on a wire just hanging down from the fucking basement, and we just watched it go clunk, boom, hit the floor. The SG got just all, fucked up on the floor, and that guy just walked out.
Yeah.
And it was weird.
And Ben had one of those Les Pauls with dual cutaways. Was it a Junior? No, it wasn't a Junior. I don't know what that model is with the dual cutaways, but
so we had to borrow a guitar, and that dude was like, yes,
because he was a sweet, nice guy.
He was a nice person, and he was like, but this is my dad's guitar. It's it's very important to me, so please be careful with it. Now, in no way were any of us like, I'm gonna fuck up that, whatever. We were not trying to be that, but we were playing, and limbs got wiggly, and I maybe somehow sort of knocked over a cymbal while playing, not intentionally. Chris was nearby, and it put a nice big
chunk out of the neck,
big scratch on that thing. It was huge.
I feel like it literally took a chunk out of the neck, didn't it? Or?
I thought it hit the body. I thought it hit on the face of it, just like a big scratch. I don't remember. It might have been that too. I hope it wasn't, but Jesus Christ. That's
and the thing was I didn't know it happened. I didn't know what happened. I had just played, and it was all normal to me. And and you ran up the stairs after we got done playing, looking like you were going to puke or cry or both.
Yeah.
And I was just completely oblivious to it. I'm with a big smile on my face, what's going on, guys? and Ben was so nice that he looked at me and humored my smile, because he knew I had no fucking clue what just happened.
Oh, that was a real bad feeling. And
he was so nice about it.
Yeah, he was very nice about it. And if you're listening, I'm really sorry still. That was not intentional. But again, this is a reoccurring theme. This happened a lot. It sucks. Yeah. But and then Daredevil played. And for those of you who don't know, Daredevil was Bill from Ordination of Aaron, and the rest of it Indian Summer Dudes?
Some of them were Indian Summer Dudes.
Okay, so there's some Indian Summer Dudes.
Adam from, I want to say his name was Adam from Indian Summer was in it. Yeah.
So it was, and it was their attempt at being that kind of Slint Rodan quarter stick records, yep. 90s slow, quiet with a lot of octave chords, twinkly stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like 7-minute songs, and so honestly, they played without much fanfare. They just did their thing, and it was fine. Did they all wear red shirts? I think they all
quite possibly. Shirts. I feel like that might have been a part of their
So they, and I guess they were just drunk, or was it just the bass player was drunk?
The bass player and possibly that dude from Indian Summer was. He was. They were kind of belligerent. When you're sometimes, myself included, you end up being seen at your not best moments, and that was kind of the case with them, I guess. They weren't. They weren't at their best at that moment.
So there was something that happened. Well, basically, it was like Bill was kind of like, "Hey, can you guys not, be like this right now?" And that turned into an argument, which spilled out into the driveway. And so we're all outside, and these guys are like screaming. They're screaming at Bill, and we're like, "What the fuck? This is kind of shitty." So we basically watched this band dissolve in the driveway of some kids. Some suburban Indiana kid's house. And
which ironically happened to us in California a year later.
Right, yeah. So it was foreshadowing, but this was weird because everything seemed okay, and then all of a sudden it was like, they were just like, bah! And then it seemed like within a half an hour, they all had tickets to go home, right?
Well, basically someone drove those two members of the band to the Greyhound station in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And I think they actually took a bus to Chicago, and I think they continued for a short time as a 2-piece.
Wow.
Yeah. I think they maybe played a show in Chicago and somehow or another got up enough money to go home and went home probably, but
yeah. So that was really weird to see because on top of the stress of I just defaced someone's prized guitar, then a band breaks up, and the other band just played 30 seconds and left, and we're like, what just happened? And then that happened, we're like, what just happened? So it was all this confusing times in Indianapolis.
Well, I think that we've talked enough today. The next one we'll start talking about their next big show, which was also in Indianapolis in the fall of 1995. All right.
So stay tuned for more hijinks. We'll talk to you later.
Yep. Bye.